Creepy things kids have said that totally freaked out their parent. Gone. But not forgotten. 1. Even though they'd never met, my youngest talks about my deceased father as if they spend time together. One day, she told me all about how Grandpa taught her how to bait a hook for fishing. He was an avid sport fisherman. She's never in her life even held a fishing pole, but described in great detail the right way to do it. Jamie Kennedy, Upland, California. 2. When my daughter was around 1, she was babbling and playing in her room. I peeked in and asked her who she was talking to. Pop Pop, she said. No, Pop Pop is in the living room, I said, thinking she was talking about my dad. She got up, walked to our dining room and pointed to a photo of my grandfather, who had passed away years before my daughter was born. Harmony Fletcher, Harpsville, New York. 3. When Ella was 3 years old, my husband and I heard her giggling and talking to someone. What's so funny? I asked. No. He is so funny, she said. Who? I asked. She answered, James. I froze. We all referred to my best friend, who had taken his own life, by his last name. My daughter, like most people, wouldn't have known that his first name was James. Janetta Moncrief Linville, Yulee, Florida. 4. My son was 7 when his grandmother died. For about a week after her burial, he would go to the kitchen or his room by himself and say, Hi, Grandma. The visit stopped after about a week. Ariana Concepcion, Yonkers, New York. Nice to meet you. 5. When my oldest daughter was 3, she was climbing on the kitchen stool and kept saying, very annoyed, Stop it, don't push me. I'm nowhere near you, I said. Not you, she said, Mano. Cowboy and Mano used to live here, but now they're gone. We lived in a 1930s bungalow, very old Hollywood. I told her to tell Cowboy and Mano that they are welcome here, but in our house we don't push or hit people. Helena Newberry Grant, Culver City, California. 6. When my son was 2, we were playing together in our basement. He was running, then he stopped suddenly and was staring down the dark hallway with our laundry room at the end. He waves to the hallway, then says to me, Mommy, who's that little boy looking at me? Dude, I nearly had a heart attack. Marie Villani York, Yonkers, New York. 7. My little sister once told my mom she was having a tea party with my deceased grandmother, who she never got a chance to meet. After my sister told my grandma that her dress was beautiful, my mom asked her what the dress looked like, and my sister described a gray dress exactly like the one she was buried in. Christina Proctor, Yorktown Heights, New York. 8. While playing with his toys in the bath, my 2-year-old son suddenly stops, looks over my shoulder behind me, points and says, Lolo, which means grandpa in Tagalog, we're Filipino. My dad died 7 years before my son was born. Joy Arzegagash, Chappaqua, New York. Strange and scary sightings. 9. When my daughter was about 4 years old, we were driving through the cemetery to visit my grandmother's grave. I made a comment about no one being there. What about that little boy standing right there, she said, pointing at the graves, and, yeah, there was no little boy there. Lisa DeVito, Summers, New York. 10. My 1-year-old son used to have night terrors. He'd just stare out the back patio door and scream. He clearly looked like he was seeing something. Once he became verbal, he would often talk about a mean lady that visited him at night. Rachel G., Minneapolis. 11. When my daughter was 2, she would often ask me who the man in our house was. Then he became the bad man, which made the mama bear in me come out. I smudged our home and it stopped. Viviana Lorado Marino, Cortland Manor, New York. 12. My daughter, who will be 3 in October, just started with this scary behavior back in May. We were at a barbecue, and all of a sudden she was terrified. I asked what was scaring her. She pointed and said, the boy. From then on, she started talking about the boy in her room and wouldn't sleep in her bed without me lying on the floor. I asked what the boy looks like. She said, blue with red eyes. Amy Vitalo, Peekskill, New York. past lives and spooky premonitions. 13. When I was 3 or 4, my mom says she showed me a picture of my aunt who had passed away 2 months before I was born. Without hesitation, I said, I know who that is. That's Aunt Diane. She took care of me before I got here. Jackie Lampo, Valhalla, New York. 14. My son was about 2 when we were watching a PBS show about World War II. My son turned to me and said, I died there. Don't you remember? Yikes. Marcy Klein, New Rochelle, New York. 15. When I was 3, I fell down a flight of stairs backwards in my footy PJs and just missed a glass table. I ran to my mother after it happened, and she told me I kept saying that I saw the man from church with the long beard and that he kept telling me to go somewhere with him, but the little girl that was with him told him I was too young and had to stay for much longer with my mommy. Jennifer Loros, Yonkers, New York. 16. When my son was 5 years old, it was raining early in the morning as I was leaving for work. I went to say goodbye and he says, be careful with the tree. I was like, weird, but okay. On my way to work that day, a tree fell right in front of my car. Natalia Leva Pizarro, Patterson, New York. 17. A few days before I had my miscarriage when my daughter was 2, she was sitting on my lap and looking into the middle distance. She said, bye-bye, baby. Bye-bye, baby. Anonymous, Culver City, California. 18. When my now 13-year-old daughter was 3 years old, she told me that she was born by the beach. When I explained that she was, in fact, born in a hospital and I distinctly remember being there, she said, no, Mama. I was born before, to my mama before you. 19. Not my kid, thankfully, but a kid I babysat as a young teenager. I had just put him in bed for the night, and about 10 minutes later, he came out and told me, I can't sleep. My brother won't leave me alone. His brother had died years earlier as a baby. I never babysat for that family again. 20. When my eldest son was almost 2, he would occasionally cry out at night. Sometimes he would be hysterical, and he would say the mean old lady was scaring him. After this had happened several times, I was holding him one night, trying to soothe him, and I said, that old lady better watch out or she'll have to deal with me. He stopped crying suddenly and leaned back from my shoulder so he could look me dead in the face. He said, she's not afraid of you, Mommy. This was 23 years ago, and I still get goosebumps thinking about it. 21. I was putting my 2-year-old niece to bed while babysitting one night when she looked over my shoulder and said, who's that? I looked behind me and asked, who? She responded, the man behind you. He was with you in the kitchen, too. We were the only ones in the house. I spent the rest of the evening in the living room on the one chair with its back to the wall, glancing around nervously. 22. My nephew was in the hospital for a year after he was born. He's always been the quiet one. I was sleeping over one night when he was around 10 years old, and he came downstairs. He went to lie down on the other end of the couch next to me and then said, there are dead people in the house. He said it so calmly and matter-of-factly. Then he went back upstairs and went to bed. 23. My friends were across the country visiting family with their kid, and they were out for a drive. The 4-year-old pointed down an old, overgrown dirt road and said, that's where I used to go to school. My friend mentioned the comment to her brother the next day when they drove by, and he told her there actually was an old schoolhouse there from the 1800s. 24. A few months after my mom passed, my daughter was sitting in the TV room. She looked down the hall, and I could tell something had caught her eye. She got up and said, Yaya is in her room, walked into my mom's room, and shut the door. I could hear my daughter talking and laughing through the door. I was equally scared and hopeful that I might hear my mom, too, but I didn't. 25. My 5-year-old has talked about his first family 4 years. He will randomly be doing something that must trigger a memory of him. He's always been consistent in his story. He says that one day, he got sick and then came to live with us. He talks less about them the older he gets, but it's always fascinating to me when he brings them up.